online. Thank you everyone for being here today. Our session is about eating for your gut and for your brain. And today we are very happy to have Roohe Ahmed with us. She is a registered dietitian with over 15 years of experience working for a healthcare organization as well as a nutrition instructor at a local college. She holds her bachelor's degree in psychology from UCLA and her master's in public health, specializing in nutrition from Loma Linda University. She specializes in weight management for adults and children and chronic diseases linked to nutrition. She's active in the Muslim community, serving on various boards and committees. She's passionate about all aspects of well-being and just as passionate about a good cup of tea. Another thing I would like to add is Roohe helps lead our program in Middle Ground in Upland. She is a star volunteer for Olive, helps facilitate and makes that program happen. So we're so grateful for her contributions and we're so happy to have her as a speaker. So Roohe, I'll put the spotlight on you and you can share your screen.
Just share my screen. All right, everyone able to see the slides okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, how's everyone doing? Assalamualaikum again. Thank you so much, Zainab, for having me here. I'm excited about this subject. I'm excited about the wellness challenge that I know a lot of you are undertaking. So inshallah, the goal is hopefully to take this information and then implement it. And feel free, if you have questions, you can put it in the chat box. I'm going to save the questions till the end, if that's okay. I'll leave a sufficient amount of time, inshallah, for the questions, and maybe during the presentation some of those questions will be answered. But if you're scared you're going to forget, just put it in the chat box, or maybe you can just like write it down, and inshallah I will get to them. So my topic is eating for your gut and brain, and I was really happy to see that last week I think the session was on emotional health, right? And I believe Sister Deanna I spoke also about just keeping our brains active, right? Engaging in different activities. So that's definitely very important, right? Not just what we're eating. Of course, what we're eating is very important, but also taking a look at our physical activity. And I'm excited that next week you have a speaker that's going to be talking about strength training. So that's fantastic. So physical activity is, of course, very important. Our stress and emotional health is also very, very important part of the wellness equation. And also sleep. So sleep, nutrition, physical activity, stress management. These are the 4 areas that we want to always kind of take a look at to see what adjustments we can make, because they work together to make us better. So last week, I believe, again, we talked about the emotional health, and we want to make sure that we are keeping our brain active by learning. I love how we have these Olive sessions every week that you can log into. So that's fantastic. Keep the social connection together. That's also really important for well-being. And so this morning, I'm going to be delving into the nutrition aspect. So originally, I was supposed to do just the gut, and that's a whole huge topic in and of itself. And Zainab's like, we also want to do brain too. And I'm like, sure, let's do the brain. So it's interesting because our gut and brain are connected. Right, we actually have a nerve that goes from our brain to our gut. And when I talk about the gut, I'm referring to not like the excess skin that we may have hanging, but we're talking about the intestinal tract. So what to do, mute.
I'm sorry about that. Let me mute.
No problem. Yeah, so we have the vagus nerve that, again, connects our brain to our gut. And there is this direct feeling. So I think sometimes you may have experienced this where maybe you're stressed about something or upset about something, and you might feel it in your tummy. You might feel like there's a phrase called butterflies in your stomach, right? Feel some indigestion. You might feel heartburn, right? You might feel like you got to use the restroom. So again, there is that direct relationship, direct connection. And we want to work on both aspects. So in terms of our brain, there's a lot of things. Let me just see if I can move my slide here. There's a lot of things that we hear about, but I want to actually hear from you all that what is it that you would like to learn today about gut health, brain health? What are some things that maybe you've heard? I just want to make sure that I am able to provide the information that you all want. And if not, at least I can provide the resources that you can find that information. Does anyone, you can put it in the chat box, but what you'd like to learn or what you've heard, what you're hoping I'm going to talk about.
There were some people who came to the earlier session and were talking about how, they can't eat too much spicy food or gluten or wheat sensitivities, stuff like that. So those were things that were brought up in the session prior. I know there is a few, and then stress and stomach connection, somebody said on the chat. So
Definitely.
things like that.
Okay, yeah. So we're going to be talking about those things for sure. And one of the best things that you all can do, honestly, is keep track of what's going on, right? So maybe there's a day where like, oh, today I was having a headache, or I was feeling really tired, or, I don't know, my stomach was off. I was having, indigestion. Think back what you ate that day, right? So think back to your breakfast, lunch, and dinner. What did I have to eat? What time did I eat? Also think back to how much sleep you got the night before. It's really interesting because we're finding that a lot of times when we don't get appropriate sleep, that also really affects us, obviously, the rest of the day, but that can also cause cravings. So if you feel like, wow, today I really felt like I needed something sugary, it has to do with the amount of sleep that you got. Think about how your stress levels were that day. Wow, today I was very stressed. That could translate out again into that indigestion. So indigestion doesn't necessarily have to be what we ate. It could be kind of linked to the stress, because again, when we're stressed, our body goes into this fight, flight, or freeze mode because our body wants to protect ourselves, right? Our body wants to save us. So what happens is when we're in the stress response, all of our resources are going into things that our body thinks needs to happen so that we can run away or we can freeze or hide or whatever. So what ends up happening is our body dumps a lot of our glucose and fat into the bloodstream for energy. Our eyesight gets kind of a little bit more better, right? Our hearing gets more acute. Our heart rate goes up. Our blood pressure goes up. So there's a lot of things that are happening because our body thinks, I'm in danger. I got to get out of here. Some of the things it kind of puts on the side. So it's like, you know what? I have to digest, but you know what? I'll digest later. Right now, I have to run out of here. So our digestion actually is affected. So just again, when you're keeping track of what you're eating, drinking, what time, think also about the sleep you got. Think about your stress levels that day. Those are also part of the equation. And you might start noticing trends, right? That, wow, every time I'm stressed, I get heartburn. Or every time I eat white bread, or every time I eat too much sugar, I have a headache, right? So there is a connection. There are tests that are being created, sorry, excuse my voice, to hopefully help us later on down the line. Sorry, everyone, let me just sip a little bit of tea. There are tests that will be able in the future to see what our body reacts to and what it doesn't. But right now, we're not there yet with the technology. So right now, the best thing to do, honestly, is just kind of keep track of what you're feeling and then kind of think back to what you had that day and what was going on that day. All right. So let's talk about the brain first. So there's a lot of research, of course, going on regarding the brain, because we are seeing Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, right, dementia on the rise as we are now seeing the baby boomer population move into their senior years. So research is looking at to see, okay, how can we decrease the risk of those conditions and what is the cause of those conditions? So there's a lot of, again, unknowns right now, but there are different diets and lifestyles that are being looked at to see what could potentially help. So one of them is the MIND diet. So the MIND diet stands for the Mediterranean DASH diet, intervention for neurodegenerative delay. So long story short, they took two different types of lifestyles. So they took the Mediterranean lifestyle, and some of you may have heard of the Mediterranean lifestyle. If not, you can do a quick Google search. It's actually a very popular diet. And by diet, I don't want us to think of like a fad diet that I'm on it to lose weight and I'm off of it. Think of diet as a way of eating, right? As a lifestyle. So in the Mediterranean region, right, southern Spain, Italy, northern Africa, Greece, those countries, they've actually found that these people, they live pretty longish lives, I guess you can say, despite their. Let me take it back. In this region, we see lower risk of heart disease, right? Lower risk of stroke, right? And also in terms of longevity, right? That's one of the regions. In terms of, there's a whole bunch of other regions called the blue zones. So that's a whole separate talk I can do on the blue zones, where people live to be like 100 plus and healthy. But in the Mediterranean region, again, based on their lifestyle, we do see decreased risk of different chronic conditions. DASH stands for the Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. That's a research-based diet to help decrease and improve blood pressure. So they combine these two lifestyles together. And by the way, for the Mediterranean lifestyle, I don't want us to feel like, oh, I have to eat hummus and pita bread and falafel and shawarma. That's not what the Mediterranean diet is indicating. It's more of a plant-based, more plants. And I know some of you are doing the wellness challenge and you have that plate, and that half of the plate is vegetables, right? So getting more plants onto our plates is very important. So the Mayan diet contains foods that are really rich in certain vitamins, minerals, antioxidant and phytochemicals called carotenoids and flavonoids. So these are compounds that we find in plants. We don't find these compounds in meats. You're not going to find antioxidant in your beef. You're not going to find phytochemicals in your chicken, right? We're going to see them from plants. And these have very powerful protective effects in the body. And they're believed to protect our brain by reducing this something called oxidative stress and inflammation. I think a lot of you may have heard about inflammation. I think a lot of us are experiencing inflammation, and that can really take a toll on our body. So let's take a look at what this MIND diet entails. And again, keep in mind, there's still research going on about this. This isn't a for sure fix. It can be very helpful. So on the MIND diet, the recommendations is to have at least 3 servings of whole grains each day. So think of 3 servings as an equivalent to 1 cup. 1 cup of cooked grains, and it should be whole grains. So steel cut oats. You can do old-fashioned oats. Those are better than instant oats. Instant oats, if you ever look at instant oats, it's like powder, right? It's literally been kind of processed to a point where it cooks very fast. As we're going to be talking about later, we really want to reduce the amount of processed foods that we're consuming. So avoid the instant oats. Let's just get the regular oats. Quinoa, brown rice, barley, bulgur, spelt, millet. There's a lot of these ancient grains, farro. So there's these ancient grains that are really making a comeback, and they haven't been changed that much during this time period because, for example, wheat. The wheat that we're eating today is very different than the wheat that our grandparents ate. And wheat, rye, and barley. Wheat, rye, and barley, these are 3 types of grains that are high in gluten. So gluten is a protein that's found in these type of grains. Gluten is not bad. I think there's a lot of hype. There's a lot of random publicity, I guess you can say, about gluten. It's not necessarily bad. There is a higher amount of it in these different grains, and that could cause sensitivities in people. There is something called celiac disease. Celiac disease is basically almost like an autoimmune disease where the body is reacting to the gluten and literally damages the intestine. So when that's happening, that's a separate disease. You can be diagnosed for that. But there is some gluten sensitivity where people, when they find, wow, I'm eating wheat, that I feel bloated, I just feel tired. But researchers don't know if it's the gluten or if it's the pesticides that are sprayed on those products. Because it's interesting, I've had friends and family that have traveled to like Europe and they eat the bread. I have no problem with the bread there, but I have a problem with our American bread. So who knows, what exactly is going on, if it's the the gluten itself or the pesticide. So something to think about. But if you feel like you're sensitive to gluten, there are other products you can have. And try to avoid some of the gluten-free products thinking that they're necessarily healthier. A lot of these gluten-free products they're made with rice flour, they're made with potato flour, they're made with tapioca. Those are not necessarily healthier, right? So you can, avoid those and just have like the loose grain, right? Have your brown rice, have your quinoa, right? Have your farro, have your bulgur, right? Add those to your foods. And those are really good things. I know Ramadan is literally around the corner. That's nice to have for your suhoor time to kind of provide you with that fiber and hopefully that satiation. Also, they found on the MIND diet to have at least one dark green salad and one other vegetable each day. If you're like, I don't like salad, that's fine. You can maybe saute it, have it however you like. Dark green leafy vegetables. Arugula is really good for our heart health. Spinach, kale, right? Those are excellent to have. And again, pick one other vegetable at least each day. So this is the minimum. You want to have berries at least twice a week. Whatever berries you like. There is a lot of benefits in all the berries, but especially blueberries. Blueberries we found could actually help with blood pressure, and it could also help with immunity. So that's nice. At least 1 ounce serving of nuts each day. Now, be careful with nuts. Nuts are a great snack. They're very fun to eat, but they also are very dense and high in calories and fat. So we want to just keep it just to a handful. Okay? Not a canful, definitely not a Costco size canister. Those you can go through really quick. So you want to keep it just a moderate amount of nuts. You can add it to your oatmeal. You can add it to your salad. You can eat it on the side. Almonds, walnuts are really good for brain health because they're rich in omega-3s. So that's really excellent. Beans are legumes. So legumes are lentils and peas at least every other day. Poultry at least twice a week. And ideally, if you're picking poultry, we want it to be the white meat. Fish at least once a week, they found was helpful. Watch how you're preparing the fish. If we're having deep fried fish, maybe not as beneficial as if we bake it or have a light saute or something. Now, I crossed out, obviously I have a Muslim audience here. It says at least 1 glass of wine each day. Obviously, that's not happening with us. And they're actually finding in the research that no benefits at all. Like, I know there's a lot of non-Muslims that feel like there's benefits to it. They really are finding in the research it's not. So we're on a good track. Purple grape juice can provide many of the same benefits. I'm not a fan of juice for anyone, to be honest. I'd rather you have the fresh fruit itself. So get the grapes. No more than 1 tablespoon a day of butter or margarine. You can choose olive oil instead. If you're going to have some of these, they don't even call them margarine anymore. They call them vegetable oil blends. Get the ones with like olive oil, right? Or just do butter, olive oil. Honestly, extra virgin olive oil is one of the best things in terms of the fats. If you can get the really good Palestinian olive oil, that would be amazing. They actually find in these good quality olive oils almost like an aspirin-like quality. So have that, but use it with your foods. With olive oil, it doesn't cook at high temperature. So you don't want to be, using it at high temperatures. It's like for a dressing. It's for like a marinade. It's like for a dip or something like that. Cheese, fried food, fast food, no more than. Now I know Ramadan's around the corner. Separate conversation about like the type of foods that come out during that type of time of month. But really try your best to keep these things to a minimum. And then pastries and sweets less than 5 times a week. So also something to keep in mind. All right. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we have that connection between our gut and our brain, right? So there is this immediate almost reaction. And it's really interesting because a year ago, right, there was a lot of talk and thought about vegans, right? So Hippocrates, ancient Greek physician, I don't know whether he said this or not, but this is attributed to him. He made this comment that all disease begins in the gut. And there was, again, in those times, there was a lot of bringing the gut in, bringing our digestive health for disease, and we are actually seeing a lot of linkage. So that's why I want to really focus on gut health. And I'm going to do, this is a really quick synopsis. I can do a more lengthier topic or lengthier talk about this topic maybe at a different time. But let's talk about what in the world is the gut microbiome in the first place. So as I mentioned, it's not our tummy necessarily, it's the internal environment. We have trillions of microbes, and microbes are like bacteria, we have viruses, yeast, fungi, or protozoans, other microscopic living things that live inside of our intestines. They're actually all over. They're from in our mouth, right? When we go to the dentist, we're aware, right, with the plaque buildup. Have all in our body. They're in us and on us. Like we have microbes that are on our skin, and they're supposed to be there. And there's trillions of them. And there is a lot of research looking at what is the role of these microbes. There's so many of them. What are they doing? And scientists, there's again tons and tons of research, and of the different microbes, one of the most studied are bacteria. There literally is a database right now that what scientists are doing is they're trying to, figure out what do these different microbes do. So some of the things that we are finding is that it could potentially affect the way that our body's processing food. It might affect why someone your time losing weight and someone doesn't. It might affect our risk, our susceptibility of getting certain diseases. It might actually affect mood. That's really interesting too. It could also affect our immune system. So let's take a look at those in depth in just a moment. So we have 10 times more microbial cells than human cells. And approximately 100 trillion of these microbes live in our gastrointestinal tract, but they're mostly in the large intestine. So when we are digesting food, digestion takes quite some time, everyone. It could take, 20 to 40 hours for us to digest, certain foods, depending. And there's quite a journey that our food goes through, so that our body breaks it down, our body absorbs what it needs, and it gets rid of what we don't need. So the small intestine is where a lot of our nutrients are absorbed. And whatever's not absorbed, whatever's kind of left over, moves into the large intestine. And that's where all these microbes are. And they're there, they're going to munch away at them, they're going to use them to do different things. So these microbes can weigh as much as 2 to 3 pounds, roughly the weight of our brain. So that's why the gut is actually called like our second brain, because it kind of weighs about the same and it has as important of a role as our brain does. So microbes are regulated by our diet. So our diet affects the type of microbes that we see in our gut. They're also affected by each other. There's some good ones and there's some bad ones, and they'll talk to each other. And if there's a very negative environment, if we have a very high inflammation environment, maybe we have a lot of stress in our life and it's just like very inflamed there, the good guys will leave. They'll say, it's really crazy here. We don't want to be here. We're leaving. So we want to, again, also be working on our mental and emotional health as well. And they're affected by signals from us, right? So like I mentioned, the stress and emotional health can really affect what we see manifest in the gut. So what do these microbes do? A lot. And since there's, many of them, it's taking time for scientists to figure out what does what. We know that they can help with our nutrient availability. So for example, certain of these microbes are going to help us to absorb and to produce certain vitamins, like the B vitamins, which are very important for energy. They can help our appetite and the type of food that we're consuming and what type of food that we are responding to. They can defend us against bad guys, non-favorable microbes. So let's suppose we ate something and there's some E. coli or salmonella or some type of, harmful organism in there. These microbes have actually trained our immune system, so our immune system will find those and get rid of them. So 70 to 90% of our immune system's actually in the gut. So that's very important to be thinking about. Also, what's really fascinating is that we have certain neurotransmitters that also are produced by these microbes. So you may have heard of some of these neurotransmitter. One of the most, I guess, popular or not popular, famous is serotonin. So that's one of the feel-good neurotransmitters. When we have low serotonin levels, we don't feel good, right? Our mood is off. Depression might be a possibility. So what's interesting is 95% of serotonin is produced in the gut. I want us to think about this. When we're not eating well, our body doesn't have these type of microbes, so it can't produce these type of neurotransmitters that will help us to feel good. So it's very interesting. So I know when we maybe are not feeling that well, maybe we're stressed, upset, anxious, depressed, we may not eat well, but it's important for us to eat well at those times to hopefully help with getting the right type of microbes in our gut. And there's a lot more. It's very fascinating. I shared this. We did a little session at Middle Ground about gut health. I shared this story where they're doing research on mice. And they had a germ-free mouse and they had an obese mouse. And what they did is they took the fecal matter, like the stool, they purified it, and then they injected it into the germ-free mouse. And then that mouse became obese. Took the fecal matter of a thin mouse, did it into that other mouse, and then that mouse became thin. So researchers are looking at like, wow, are there certain microbes that might affect people's weight? So that's a huge area. I mean, can you imagine if they were able to find that? And again, with mood, right, immunity, there's a lot going on. So this is I'm just basically just touching the surface of the importance of these microbes. Now, you may have heard of the term probiotic. So probiotics, these are alive. So when you see that O, it says probiotic, think of it as an organism. So according to the World Health Organization, probiotics are their live microorganisms, which when administered in adequate amounts, confers a health benefit on the host. So let me translate that. Basically, these live organisms, when we get enough of them, give us some sort of benefit. A lot of microorganisms that are harmful, that could cause disease, that can cause, other issues. There are microorganisms that do nothing. They're just there. They're neutral. But a probiotic is actually going to be helpful. And we don't know yet how much we need of what kind. So be careful of supplements. I'll come back to supplements in just a moment. Now, what these probiotics do help to encourage a healthy microbiome. So when we eat fermented foods, that's a source of probiotic. What's going to happen is that probiotic, these organisms, they're alive, they have to go all the way through the digestive tract. And the digestive tract is really long. If we stretched out from our mouth to the anus, if we were to stretch out all that piping, I guess you can say, it's about the size of half of a tennis court. It's very long. So it's quite a journey that these organisms have to go through. So a lot of them die off. They're bacteria, they're other microbes. They don't live that long. So whoever can make it, they finally make it into the large intestine. You think of them like a cleaning crew. So they'll kind of clean, they'll kind of organize, everyone okay, everyone healthy here. Okay, we're leaving. Some leave and some stay, right? So they're kind of like, again, a cleaning organization crew. We want to make sure that we're getting a good source of probiotics every day to help our gut microbiome. So we'll talk more about where we can find them. So where we can find them is in fermented foods. So one of the most popular sources of probiotics are the fermented dairy foods like yogurt. So yogurt, and some of you I know make your own yogurt, and that's excellent. That's a great habit. That's a great thing to do. So no, I don't want to make yogurt. It's hard for me. We can purchase yogurt. That's fine too. Ideally, we want to get plain yogurt. And if you get Greek yogurt, it's a little bit more thicker. And Greek yogurt has more protein. And protein is very important for us as we're aging. Very, very important. Unfortunately, I know many people 55 plus that do not get enough protein. And it can actually affect our muscle mass, right? And our overall health. So we want to make sure that we're getting an adequate protein. So yogurt, of course, there's so many different types of yogurts. I know when I go to the store, sometimes it gets very overwhelming. There's, regular yogurt, there's Greek yogurt, there's yogurt made from soy, from cashew, there's just different types. So what we want to do ideally is we want to get the plain kind, and we want to get ones that don't have sugar, ideally that do not have sugar. I'm going to show you a slide in just a minute of what you would be looking for. Kefir. So kefir or kefir, also you can buy easily in the store. This has a lot of different microbes in it. It's kind of like a lassi almost, that type of a texture. Cottage cheese. There are cottage cheese that do have probiotics. There's a brand I think called Good and Gather. It's like a blue label. You can get it from Target and from other places. That has probiotics in there. Cottage cheese is also a good source of protein too. But for those of you that have high blood pressure, just kind of watch out because it does have a lot of sodium. So if you're eating it by itself with fruit, that's fine. But if you're eating it with other things as well, just keep in mind the sodium. And buttermilk also has some probiotics too. Kimchi, sauerkraut, these are becoming very popular. These are fermented cabbage. And you can buy them at the grocery stores. They're usually in the refrigerated section. Tempeh and miso, these are fermented soy. So you can also find these in the grocery stores. Kombucha, that's like a tea, it has yeast in it. Be careful with the kombucha that usually has juice in it. If anyone is immunocompromised, just be careful with some of these fermented foods. Talk to your doctor about it because you're basically, incorporating different microbes into your body. And pickles, but they have to be pickled from salt and water, not vinegar. Now, basically what you want to do is when you're buying these things, you want to look on the label and it's going to say live active cultures. You want to see life. You want to see microbes. So it'll say live active cultures. Look for that. And then we would want to see how many of these organisms are in there. So let me give you an example. This is a yogurt example. I found it online. It's not mine. But it will say, you guys see where it says contains 7 live and active cultures. When we're buying yogurt, we would like to look for 6 or more at least. So the more the merrier, the more variety, the better. So you'll see them. They'll have them listed here. So these are really, again, beneficial. And I know kefir, for example, has 12 different of these cultures. So when we're having the fermented foods, everyone, you don't have to have a lot. Like you don't need to eat this whole, container of yogurt. Just like a little, like half a cup, right? Maybe you're having kefir a little bit, just you're drinking. Maybe you want to try sauerkraut. Maybe you do want to try kimchi, just like a couple of tablespoons. It doesn't need to be a lot. And you want to have variety, right? So maybe one day I'm having my yogurt. Maybe the next day I'm drinking my kefir. So you can alternate in what you're doing to get the variety. We want to have a diverse microbiome. And in terms of probiotic supplements, again, I would talk to your practitioner because with the probiotic supplements, we don't know yet what microbe does what. So we don't want to have too much of something. There is a database, again, that practitioners can look at to see what microbe could help with whatever condition that you may have. So there are some that could affect, could help with digestion. There's some that could help with mood. So again, there's a lot of research going on there. We're not there yet. If you have questions about probiotics, you can reach out to me. But my just overall generalized advice I would give right now is just talk to your practitioner about whether or not you should be taking that. Okay. These are for the supplements. The food, go ahead. That's fine. But the supplements, just be careful when you're taking those, if you are. So I can talk more about that again if later on. Now, I mentioned that when we are purchasing, these fermented foods, we don't want to have extra sugar. And that's actually something across the board. We really need to reduce the amount of added sugars that we are consuming. So when you are taking a look at your different products, this is a yogurt, by the way, take a look at where it says, it'll say total sugar. So total sugars means all the sugars in there, natural sugar, added sugar, sugars. We want to have a breakdown. We want to see how much Added sugar. Added sugars are sugars that were added in. They were not supposed to be there. And unfortunately, as a population, we're consuming a lot of added sugar. Extra added sugars can turn into fat. Extra added sugars can affect inflammation.
उसमें रात था
I think, Zainab, if you don't mind muting, I think someone's unmute. So extra added sugars, right? We want to take a look at because again, they can affect inflammation. They can actually affect our gut microbiome negatively. So we want to ideally, when you're seeing a label, you want to see 0 added sugar. They'll actually break it down. If you take a look here, it says 11 grams added sugar. So of these 14 grams, 11 were extra. They were added in. We don't want to see that. There is some natural sugar in yogurt. That's fine. That's like milk sugar, lactose. That's not a problem. It's the added sugars that's problematic. So I'm just going to just share a quick tip. So where you see added sugars, if you take those added sugars, they're going to be in grams. And if you divide it by 4, that's going to tell you how many teaspoons you're having. Then it becomes a little bit more tangible in our head, right? So for example, this is 11 grams of added sugar. If you divide it by 4, that's going to tell us how much teaspoons we have. So this is almost 3 teaspoons of sugar. It's just 6 ounces. It's not big. That's a lot, right? Think about it. If you had your own yogurt at home, would you be putting 3 teaspoons of sugar? That's why it's always best, everyone. You can just get plain yogurt. You can add your fresh fruit. You want to put a little bit of honey in it, a little bit of nuts. Go for it. But try to get plain if you can. All right. Now, probiotics, right? Remember, they're organisms, they help our body. They're alive, so they need food. Their food is something called prebiotics. And when you see the E in prebiotics, think of it as energy. So this is even more important because probiotics, they need something to eat. They make this whole journey going down our digestive tract. They get into this large intestine and they're like, we need to eat. We need to survive. So we want to make sure that we have prebiotics there. And prebiotics, guess what this is? It's actually fiber. There are different types of fibers that we're consuming from plant-based foods. They munch away at these different fibers. So long story short, what we need to do is we want to make sure we're getting more fiber and natural fiber, not the Metamucil. That's fine and everything if you need it on the side, your practitioner recommended it, but it's best to get fiber in their natural sources. Now, these foods that I have listed here, these are some of the prebiotic foods that we see higher amounts of different types of fiber. Asparagus stalks, Jerusalem artichokes, bananas in there, but like the green, more of the green bananas, beans, beets, broccoli stalk. So save the broccoli stalk. I know a lot of times we just cut it out, throw it away, save that, cut it up, use that. I know they even have salads that are made from like the broccoli stalks that you can use as like a coleslaw or something. Brussels sprouts, carrot peels. So maybe don't peel your carrot all the way. Celery, the strings of the celery. So I know some of these things are difficult. Like they're very fibrous. And again, if anyone has any other conditions going on, right? That's going to outweigh the recommendations I'm giving here, right? So some of you might have diverticulosis, some of you might have, kidney issues, other issues going on. So whatever that diet is that you're following, if some of these things, go against that, then follow that diet. So for example, some of you that might have kidney issues might be avoiding whole wheat, whole grains. So stick to that. But this is more of a generalized advice. Chicory, this is something that's been being added to a lot of different foods. That's a source of fiber. Flaxseed. And for flaxseed, we would want to, ideally, there's 2 ways to use flax. You can just do the seed straight and add that. That has actually more of a laxative effect, which some people may want. But if you want to get the omega-3s, these are really good for inflammation. You would grind it up and then add it to your oatmeal, add it to your yogurt. You can buy it already ground up. If you buy flaxseed already ground up, you want to store it in the fridge. Garlic, honey, I put an asterisk next to honey because it's still a sweetener, so don't go crazy with it. It's always nice to have like the organic, local, raw honey. right? You can get those from farmers market, like that. Oats, onions, raspberries, so forth. So basically, the whole theme, as you're all seeing, is we want to get more plants into our life, vegetables, fruits, whole grains, beans, lentils. All of these things are so, so beneficial. So here are some other high fiber rich foods. You can now even buy pasta that's made from beans or lentils. You'll see the ingredient, bean, water, and it's pasta. So you can use that in certain things. So there's, again, a lot of great foods out there. And let's suppose you're like, okay, Roohe, that's good. I'm going to eat my yogurt. I'm going to have kefir. I'm going to have more vegetables and fruits. But if we're still eating lots of added sugary foods, we're putting lots of artificial sweeteners into things, we're eating foods that are containing a lot of unhealthy fats, processed foods. So ultra processed foods, everyone, are foods that know how many steps it took from farm to table. So you know how sometimes you pick up foods, like for example, we have some foods here on this slide, like these different pastries, Cheetos. Like what's the raw material of Cheetos? How did that start? So if you don't know what the original item was, and you see that there's a lot of ingredients on the list, that's ultra processed. You might want to avoid that. And I know, alhamdulillah, in our population, people are not, eating so much of these, but they still do seep in. So just kind of watch the ultra processed foods. That unfortunately can affect our gut health, and that can affect our brain health as well. And same with artificial sweeteners. Artificial sweeteners could potentially affect the gut microbiome. So if you're using, some of the colored packets, if you're diabetic, it's a different story. Then for those that have diabetes, maybe using stevia in small amounts. But if you do not have diabetes, just, try to use less sugar, maybe do like honey, maybe maple syrup, but just less. Dates, you can cut up dates into your oatmeal. So use like natural, like fruits as your sweetener. Now, what we're finding, everyone, is that if our gut is off, if our gut microbiome is just not healthy, not thriving, that can affect inflammation levels in our body. Also, inflammation levels can affect our gut. So they work both ways. So if we have high inflammation, a lot of the good bacteria, they leave because it's so toxic in the body. And vice versa. If we have a lot of, bad microbes, then that can be a stressor on the body and instigate the inflammation. So when we have high levels of inflammation in the gut, we could also have high levels of inflammation in the brain. And that could affect depression. That could affect risk of, cognitive diseases. So again, tons of research looking at that. So this neuroinflammation, we want to reduce it. Same with the overall body inflammation. So here are some anti-inflammatory foods and practices that you can incorporate. So fasting actually helps with inflammation. So we have our whole month coming up of fasting. Those that cannot fast, that's okay, right? You can space out your meals, right? And we should be doing that regardless. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And in between, if we're feeling hungry, then you have a snack. And the larger meals should actually be earlier on in the day than later in the day. Now, if we are going to be fasting, be smart when we're fasting, right? Make sure you have a good sahur, right? Get those whole grains in, get those good proteins in. And then when you're breaking your fast, right, watch all the fried foods and the sweet foods. Maybe keep it to like once a week. If maybe you have iftar that you're going to at the masjid, or a family or a family friend, and you want to have, something there, that's fine. But on a day-to-day basis, let's try to, keep it to the healthy plate method foods that I know a lot of you have been doing. Fruits and vegetables, hands down, very, very helpful. But we want to have diversity, have different colors. If you always get green bell peppers, that's great. Maybe get the yellow, maybe get the orange, maybe get the red. The different pigments will actually correspond to the different phytochemicals and antioxidants that are in there. Omega-3s are really important for inflammation as well. This is a fatty acid that our body doesn't make. Our body relies on us to consume. So we can get it from walnuts, we can get it from ground flaxseed, and fatty fish. So like salmon, Sardines for those that eat the sardines. I'm just saying that because I tried sardines. I can't do it. It's very hard for me to eat, so I skip that. But if you can do sardines, that's actually a really good fish to have because it's also good in calcium too. So having fatty fish also helps with omega-3s. Non-processed whole grains, so grains in their loose form. That's great that you're having a quinoa chip, but that's a chip, right? You want to have quinoa in its natural form. And we're so blessed in our cultures that we have lots of spices in our food. And spices, everyone, amazing. Like there's so many beneficial qualities. Saffron actually can help with mood. It's very interesting. You could take a couple of threads of saffron, right? Add it to, some nice, some milk, maybe some honey, maybe you have a little bit of cinnamon, and you can have a nice calming drink there. Turmeric, are hopefully using that everywhere. Our food should be yellow because it's a very powerful anti-inflammatory. Sage, ginger, chili, peppers, black pepper, all these things. When you're having turmeric, of course, make sure you also have black pepper with it. That helps the turmeric to get absorbed. Green tea also is very high in something called ECGC. This is a polyphenol, a phytochemical. So having green tea throughout the day, that's nice. Black tea is okay too, but when we add in the milk, that kind of defeats the purpose. So you can do green tea, you can do matcha green tea. That's like a condensed version of green tea, but not with the milk. Physical activity, very, very important. Next week, you're going to be talking about strength training, but also getting cardio. Walking is one of the best activities for brain health, for anti-inflammation. And if you can walk in nature, that's amazing. Just even looking at nature is anti-inflammatory for the body. Meditation, relaxation, alhamdulillah, we're good. We have our 5 prayers built in. Like it's so amazing that will give us that moment of just pulling back from the world, right? Relaxing. And we really need to watch the red meats we're having, processed meats. If you're eating like, they have like bologna and cold cuts and beef bacon and stuff like that, those hot dogs, those things we want to avoid just in general. Increased consumption of those processed meats are tied to potential increased risk of different cancers. So the processed meats we should eliminate. Luckily, like I said, in our population, we don't see too much of it, but it might still be out there. Ultra processed foods we talked about, sugars, refined carbohydrates, lots of enriched flours we want to try to avoid. So look for whole wheat, whole grain, or make your own breads, right? That's even better. I already talked about gluten. For some people, it could be potentially inflammatory. Dairy could be potentially inflammatory for some people as well. So you don't have to have cow's milk. You can also have there's soy milk, there's almond milk. So there's other types of milks that you can have, but just make sure when you're buying those milks, you see that it has calcium and vitamin D. And if someone's not eating fruits and vegetables, someone's not getting activity, they're not sleeping well, they're stressed, things to inflammation. All right. So just really quickly, here's a list of foods to aim for regularly. So if you want to take a screenshot of this, you want to take a picture of this, you're welcome to do so. So every day, everyone, get a fistful of dark green veggies daily. So spinach, kale, you can buy like those power mixes, use that, so put it in with your egg, have it with your salad. 3 servings, which is 1 cup cooked ancient grains. I already talked about those. Half a cup cooked legumes, so beans and lentils daily or at least 3 times a week. Berries, half a cup a day or at least 3 times a week. You want to work your way up to 1 tablespoon that's ground up. You can sprinkle that in different things. Turmeric, I don't think I have to talk to this group about turmeric. We're already hopefully, inshallah, getting it in. Handful of nuts, just a handful. Eating some green tea daily. If you are sensitive to caffeine, then you can get decaf green tea. That's fine as well. All right, my last slide. Here are just some good strategies for good health. So we want to move more, especially natural physical activity. So getting out there, walking, maybe every hour you get up, you stretch, you move around. Manage your stress, includes social connection, getting enough quality sleep, gut health, eating less processed, wholesome foods, preferably more plant-based. Eat less, watch your portions, stick to that 9-inch plate. Calories. Our calories should not come from juice, sodas, eliminate those meals, and keep track of what you're eating and drinking and how you're feeling to help see what's affecting your body. So this is just a condensed version, everyone. Each slide I could talk so much more about. I feel like I can do a whole series on this, but we're going to keep it simple. And we have some time for, so if anyone has questions, you're welcome to ask. Zainab, if you want to field the questions, however you want to do it.
Sorry, I'm unmuting myself. Thank you so much, Roohe, first and foremost, for covering so much in such a short amount of time and really hitting all the primary, information that we need. So I'm going to throw some questions at you. Okay,
Sure.
Here we go. What about avocado oil?
Yeah, so avocado and olive oil, these are the two oils I would actually suggest using. So extra virgin olive oil, remember, you want good quality. Because there are some brands that are not as great. Like I said, if we can get our hands on the good Palestinian olive oil, that would be one of the best. But you would not use that at high temperatures. So if you're going to be cooking at high temperatures, that's when you're going to be using the avocado oil. So you can use the avocado oil. But even with oils, everyone, try to use a little bit less. Because when we're heating them, we are destroying some of their properties. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, avocado oil, olive oil are the two oils that I would suggest.
All right.
Yeah.
You are correct about people in Europe with less or no gluten issues. That's because of their non-GMO diet. Any thoughts on that?
Yes, for sure. Europe is very strict with the foods, their food supply. Very, very strict. So they don't have this GMO, genetically modified organisms. Things are just grown very differently. Like even like their eggs, right? Even their cheese, like you can taste
dairy,
it different. Yeah. So it's unfortunately our food supply really needs a lot of work. So we're as consumers, we have power. So if you're just stop buying some of these things, they're going to hopefully stop providing it. So we have power in our purchasing power.
Right. Should we be trying to eliminate sugar from our diets?
Yes, and like the added sugar, natural sugar. Don't be scared of natural sugar. Don't be scared of fruit. Don't be scared of the natural sugar. We are more concerned about those added sugars. So cookies, the candies, all those things we want to try to limit as much as we can. So we had a sugar challenge that I know some people were doing in Middle Ground for 2 weeks. They eliminated added sugar because we're very addicted to sugar. So once you remove it, it feels weird. We don't feel that good, but that's because our body is getting rid of that addiction. And then you start to notice the natural sweetness of foods.
All right, some comments over here, and then we'll go to the live questions in a second. Somebody mentioned about the worst of the unhealthy fat is seeds oil.
Yes, the soybean oil, all those safflower, all those oils are high in omega-6s. And omega-6s could be potentially inflammatory in high amounts. So yeah, I would not be, even grapeseed oil, I would not be using that.
And someone mentioned try green tea with ginger, cloves, and cardamom.
Yes, that's so good. Yes.
Love it. And Roohe, is it okay if I stop sharing your screen so we can see you?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yes, go ahead with the questions. We can take maybe 2 to 3 questions, depending. Unmute yourselves. Farkunda, did you have one? Yes, go for it. We can hear you.
For some reason, I can't hear anything.
Okay. We can hear you, though. We can hear you.
I'm not able to hear anything.
Avocado daily.
Yeah, that's great too. Avocado daily, but just only keep it to half. I would just do half. So just cut half, put it on your toast, put it on your salad, wrap it up, and then have the other half later. Because it does have a lot of fat. It's good fat, but it's still a lot of fat. So you want to watch how much we're having.
All right. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. I have a question.
Okay, let's do Amal and then Esmat. Okay, go for it.
Thank you very much for this.
I cannot hear anything.
Yeah. Hello?
Go for it.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My question is regarding the fruits. Now we see fruits all around year. So how do we choose the fruit that is seasonal? Because I know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the fruit seasonal because of our body needs this fruit in this season.
Yes,
Like,
that's
so
an
now
excellent question.
do I eat berries now or just stick to the citruses because it's like, the season? This is always like confuse me because you go to the market and see all kind of fruits. So
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
know, how do you
nowadays
think?
with, our transport, we can get foods that are in season in other places. We can get them here, right? So that should be okay. There's something I want you to look up. It's called the Dirty Dozen. The Dirty Dozen, this is a list of 12 fruits and vegetables that have a high amount of pesticides. So when we are buying certain foods, you try to buy organic, some of the foods organic. If the organic foods are too expensive, then take the food and soak it in some baking soda and water. Soak some of the fruits, vegetables, and that helps reduce some of the pesticide content. But in terms of seasonal, like berries, it's fine. You can have it year round because we're getting it from other places. So that's fine. But like I said, check the Dirty Dozen. Those are certain foods that are like the dirtiest in terms of pesticides. If we can get those organic, that would be great. If not, like I said, do a soak of water to baking soda to get rid of some of that residue.
Thank you. Go for it, Ismat.
Yeah, my question is regarding this. What is buttermilk and cottage cheese? What we prepare cheese at home, like back home, we boil the milk, we put lemon or vinegar in it to split it out and then strain it, and that is how we make the cheese. Right. So that is what we call cheese, which is called paneer in our language. You might not be knowing that term. What is cottage cheese?
It's kind of like these little cheese curds that you can see. I don't know if you can, I'm sure we can make it, but they'll usually add those microbes in there. So that's actually very high in protein as well. So it's actually, it's a good snack to have with like some fruit. And in terms of like paneer, because since we're making it with the vinegar is not going to help with as much microbes. Ideally, when we're pickling things, it needs to be like salt and water that's being used, not necessarily vinegar.
No,
but buttermilk, you can.
Yeah, but we don't use the vinegar. I use lemon, just lemon, and it gets strained with along with the.
That's great.
And Roohe, what about
buttermilk?
Oh, buttermilk.
Fine too. You can even make your own buttermilk. I'm gonna be honest. I'm not a fan. I just put it on the slide because it is a source, and I know sometimes we do have it. But I would rather you use like the other sources of those probiotics than the buttermilk because of the fat content and so
One
forth.
more
Yeah.
question. It's regarding tofu.
Oh yeah.
How good is it and how?
Yeah, I like tofu. I like soy. I know there's a lot of different controversies on soy, which is they don't have that much research to back some of that up. If you are going to use soy, make sure it's organic. That's the biggest thing I would suggest because obviously our soybeans grown in the US have a lot of pesticides and all these other issues. If you're having soy, if you're having tofu, that's fine. Make sure that it is organic. And just having like one serving, right? Maybe half a cup, 1 cup a day. Just limit it to that, even a couple times a week. That's a whole separate conversation. But yeah, just keep it to a small amount. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Roohe. I know you had another meeting to head to, so thank you so much
Sorry,
for your
friends,
time.
Thank you so much.
I'd love to come back, inshallah, one day.
Yes, we would love for you to be back on another time. So if you still have some questions, Oliver's, please message them to me, and we can definitely address them in a different session and a different time. But huge kudos to Roohe for this great session and great turnout. You guys, I'm so happy to see all of your faces and your questions and engagement.
Olive Community Services is a 501c3 nonprofit organization based in Southern California that provides culturally appropriate services to seniors, their family, and the community. Through its physical and virtual interactive programs, Olive engages participants in a variety of ways that promotes health and well-being. To learn more about Olive Community Services, to get involved, or to make a donation, please visit www.olivecs.org or email info@olivecs.org. Be a change maker, and together, let's live, learn, and thrive.